I found a birthday card in my husband's jacket pocket addressed to Dad from children I never had. My hands trembled as I read the names at the bottom, written in teenage handwriting. Emma and Joshua, ages 17 and 15. My name is Margaret. I'm 71 years old, and I had just discovered that my husband of 45 years had been living a complete double life, while I thought we were building our golden years together. The card had fallen out when I was checking his pockets before doing the laundry, something I'd done every Saturday morning for 45 years. It was a simple thing, really. Blue envelope, store-bought card with a cartoon father figure on the front. But inside, the words made my world collapse. Happy birthday, Dad. Thanks for taking us to the lake last weekend. Mom says you work too hard, but we love spending time with you. Love, Emma and Josh. There was a date 2 weeks ago. My husband Richard had told me he was at a sales conference in Columbus that weekend. I stood there in our bedroom, the same bedroom where we'd slept side by side for over 4 decades, and I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. The card smelled like someone else's perfume, something floral and young that I would never wear. My own scent has been the same Chanel No. 5 since 1982, a gift from Richard on our 10th anniversary. Or at least, I thought it was just for me. Let me tell you who I was before this moment. My name is Margaret Ann Peterson. I married Richard James Peterson on June 14th, 1980, in a small church ceremony in Columbus, Ohio. I wore my mother's wedding dress, altered to fit my smaller frame, and I carried pink roses because that's all we could afford. Richard worked as an entry-level pharmaceutical sales representative, making $22,000 a year. I was a kindergarten teacher, making $18,000. Together, we had dreams bigger than our small apartment and our used furniture. I gave up teaching in 1982 when our first child, Michael, was born. Richard's job required him to travel, he said, sometimes 3 days a week. It made sense for me to stay home. We agreed I'd go back to work when the children were older. Our daughter Sarah came in 1984, and our youngest, David, in 1987. 3 beautiful children who became my entire world while Richard built his career. By 1995, Richard was making $65,000 a year. He'd become a regional manager, overseeing sales teams across Ohio and Pennsylvania. The travel increased. Monday through Friday, he was often gone, coming home only on weekends. It's for our future, Maggie, he'd say, using the nickname only he called me. I'm building something for us, for the kids' college funds, for our retirement. I never questioned it. Why would I? Richard was a good provider. He never missed a mortgage payment on our 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. He attended the important events, most parent-teacher conferences, Sarah's dance recitals when he could, Michael's baseball games on Saturdays. He was there for David's graduation from high school in 2005, beaming with pride as our youngest son walked across that stage. The children grew up. Michael became an accountant, married a lovely girl named Jennifer in 2008. Sarah went to nursing school, married her college sweetheart Tom in 2010. David joined the military, served 4 years, came home and started working in IT. By 2015, we were empty nesters. Just me and Richard in our house that suddenly felt too big. Now it's our time, Maggie. Richard had said on our 35th anniversary in 2015. We were at the same Italian restaurant where he proposed, back in 1979. The kids are settled. We can travel, maybe get that RV we always talked about, see the country together. He held my hand across the table, his thumb rubbing circles on my palm the way he'd done for decades. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. But the travel didn't stop. If anything, it increased. Richard took a position as a senior vice president in 2016, making $92,000 a year. Just a few more years until I can retire with full benefits, he promised. Then it's you and me, babe. Maybe we'll move to Florida, get a little condo on the beach. I fill my days with book club, volunteering at the local hospital, having lunch with my girlfriends from church. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, Richard called me at exactly 7 p.m., just finished dinner with clients, he'd say. Long day, but thinking of you. I'll be home tomorrow night. His voice was always warm, always loving. Sometimes I'd hear restaurant noise in the background, the clink of glasses, soft music. He was working, I told myself, providing for us. The weekends were ours. Saturday mornings, I'd make his favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs with cheese, crispy bacon, wheat toast with butter and strawberry jam. He'd read the newspaper while I did the crossword puzzle. We'd work in the garden together, his hands helping me plant tomatoes and roses. Sunday mornings, we attended church, sitting in the same pew we'd sat in for 30 years. Sunday afternoons, we'd watch old movies, his arm around my shoulders, my head resting on his chest. I thought we were happy. I thought we were enough. On our 40th anniversary in 2020, during the pandemic when the world shut down, Richard was home for 3 straight months. It was the most time we'd spent together since the children were small. We played cards, cooked elaborate meals, watched the news together with growing concern about the virus. He seemed restless sometimes, checking his phone more than usual, taking calls outside in the backyard. Work crisis, he'd explain. Even during lockdown, business doesn't stop. When the world opened back up, he returned to his travel schedule with what seemed like relief. They need me at the regional office, he said. Some of the younger guys couldn't handle the isolation, quit their jobs. I need to pick up the slack. He was 68 then, past typical retirement age, but his company valued him, he said. They needed his experience. I supported him as I always had. That's what you do in a marriage, isn't it? You support each other. You trust each other. You build a life together, brick by brick, year by year, until you have something solid and real. Except it wasn't real. Not for him. That birthday card changed everything. I sat down on our bed, the bed we bought together in 2005, and I read the card again. And again. Emma and Joshua, 17 and 15, which meant they were born in 2007 and 2009. While I was celebrating our silver anniversary in 2005, while I was helping plan Michael's wedding in 2008, while I was becoming a grandmother for the first time in 2009 when Michael and Jennifer had little Emily, Richard was creating another family somewhere else. But where? And with whom? And how? The questions circled my mind like vultures. I looked at the envelope. No return address, but it was postmarked from Akron, Ohio. Akron was 45 minutes from our home in Columbus, close enough to maintain 2 separate lives, far enough that the chances of accidentally running into someone were minimal. I didn't cry. That's the strange thing. I thought I would dissolve into tears, but instead, I felt this cold, clear rage settling into my bones. It was a feeling I'd never experienced before, this icy fury that sharpened everything around me. The bedroom came into focus with painful clarity. The photos on the dresser of our children and grandchildren, the painting of a sunset I'd bought at a craft fair in 2012 because Richard said it reminded him of our honeymoon, the reading glasses he'd left on his nightstand next to a book about sailing. All of it was a lie. Our entire life was a performance, and I'd been the only one who didn't know she was acting. I stood up, went to his closet, and started searching. Methodically, every pocket, every shoe, every box on the top shelf. I found a second phone tucked inside a shoe box labeled Old Tax Documents 2015. It was an iPhone, newer than my own, with a simple black case. When I pressed the home button, it asked for a password. I tried our anniversary, 0614. Nothing. I tried his birthday, 0423. Nothing. I tried the children's birthdays. Nothing. Then I remembered something. When we first started dating in 1978, Richard had a dog named Chester, a golden retriever he'd had since childhood. That dog died the year before we married, and Richard cried. Actually cried, the only time I'd seen him shed tears until his mother passed away in 2003. On a whim, I typed in Chester 79. The phone unlocked. My heart hammered in my chest as I looked at the home screen. There were text messages, hundreds of them, from a contact labeled simply home. I opened the thread and my world tilted again. Don't forget Emma has soccer practice at 4. Can you pick her up? Josh needs help with his algebra homework tonight. You promised. I made your favorite pot roast for dinner. Try to be home by 6. Happy anniversary, Richard. 18 years today. I love you. 18 years. In 2024, that meant this relationship started in 2006, before Emma was born, which meant this wasn't an affair. This was a marriage. This was a life. This was a family. I scrolled through the messages, going back weeks, months. There were photos. Richard at a dining table with a blonde woman in her late 40s and two teenagers, a boy and a girl. They were smiling, the four of them, in front of a birthday cake. Richard's arm was around the woman. They looked happy. They looked like a family. A normal, happy family. There were other photos. Richard at a soccer game, cheering from the bleachers. Richard helping a teenage boy work on a car in a driveway. Richard and the blonde woman dressed up, probably for a date night, her head leaning on his shoulder. Richard asleep on a couch with the teenage girl's head on his lap, both of them napping. These weren't stolen moments. These weren't secret meetings in hotels. This was domestic life. This was what I had with Richard, except it was parallel, separate, another version existing at the same time as mine. I looked at the photos saved in the phone. There were hundreds. Family vacations to beaches I'd never seen. Christmas mornings with a tree I'd never decorated. Thanksgiving dinners at a table I'd never set. School plays, sporting events, casual weekend moments. 18 years of memories that had nothing to do with me. The blonde woman appeared in many photos. She was attractive, I suppose, in a casual way. Shorter than me, rounder, with laugh lines around her eyes and highlighted hair cut in a bob. In some pictures, she wore glasses. In others, she was dressed for work in business casual attire. She looked kind. She looked normal. She looked like someone who could be my friend if we'd met in different circumstances. I found her name in the text messages, Linda. Linda sent him messages about grocery shopping and dentist appointments. Linda reminded him to pick up milk on the way home. Linda told him she loved him and couldn't wait for him to finish his work week in Columbus. Columbus, my city, my home, the place I thought was his home too. But to Linda and Emma and Joshua, Columbus was where Richard went for work. We were the other life, or they were. I couldn't tell anymore which family was real and which was the secret. I sat on the bed with his phone in my hand and tried to understand the logistics. How does a man maintain two complete families for 18 years? How does he remember which lie he told to which wife? How does he keep the story straight? Then I started thinking practically. The travel schedule made sense now. Work trips to Pennsylvania and Ohio cities that he described in vague terms were actually days with Linda, Emma, and Joshua. The Tuesday and Thursday evening calls at 7 p.m. were probably made after dinner with them, maybe from his car in their driveway before driving back to me. The weekends he spent with me were bookended by weekdays with them. I thought about the money. Richard made $92,000 a year in his last position before semi-retiring in 2022. He'd told me he was cutting back, working only 3 days a week, making about $60,000 now. I'd been proud of him for taking it easier, for preparing for full retirement. Our bills were paid. We had savings. We lived modestly but comfortably. But if he was supporting two households, how did the math work? Our mortgage was paid off in 2015. So our housing cost was just property taxes and utilities, maybe $900 a month. Our other expenses, food, insurance, medical, ran maybe $2,000 a month. Call it $36,000 a year for us. That left him with $24,000 or $2,000 a month. Enough for an apartment maybe, or a small house rental if Linda worked too. I went back to the text messages and searched for financial discussions. There, I found it. Linda worked as an office manager for a dental practice, making $42,000 a year. Together, they had a combined income of over $100,000. They rented a house in Akron for $1,500 a month. It was tight, Linda mentioned in one message, especially with two teenagers, but they managed. They managed. While I thought we were saving for our retirement dream, Richard was funding an entirely separate existence. How much money had gone to Emma's braces, Joshua's baseball equipment, Linda's birthday presents? How many family dinners had he bought? How many utility bills paid? How many school supplies purchased? I thought about our children, Michael, Sarah, and David. Did they have a half-sister and half-brother they'd never met? Did Emma and Joshua know they had three half-siblings in Columbus? Or did everyone exist in separate bubbles, none of us knowing about the others? More questions. Did Linda know about me? The text messages suggested not. She referred to him going to work in Columbus, not going to your other wife. She talked about their anniversary, 18 years, as if it were his only marriage, which meant Linda, like me, was being deceived. But what about Emma and Joshua? Children ask questions. Didn't they wonder why their father was gone 3 or 4 days a week? Every week? Didn't they wonder about his past, his family before them? Or had Richard invented a complete backstory? Maybe claiming to be a widower with estranged adult children? I needed answers, but I also needed to be smart. Confronting Richard immediately would give him time to create more lies, to cover his tracks, to manipulate the situation. I'd been married to this man for 45 years, and I hadn't seen the truth about him. I couldn't trust my instincts anymore. Instead, I took photos of everything on his secret phone. Every text message, every photo, every contact. I used my own phone to photograph his phone screen, hundreds of images documenting his double life. Then I carefully put his phone back exactly where I found it, in the shoebox in his closet. I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea, Earl Grey with honey, the way I'd made it for myself thousands of times. My hands were steady now. The initial shock had burned away, leaving behind something harder and colder. I sat at our kitchen table, the one we bought at an estate sale in 1992, and I thought about my life. 45 years. I'd given this man 45 years of my life. I'd raised his children, kept his house, supported his career. I turned down a chance to go back to teaching when David started school because Richard said his travel schedule was too demanding and he needed me at home. I'd given up reconnecting with my college roommate who moved to California because Richard said long-distance friendships were impractical. I'd chosen this man and this life over every other possibility, and all of it was based on a lie. Not just a lie, an entire architecture of lies, built room by room, year by year, until I was living in a house that didn't exist. I thought about confronting Linda. She deserved to know, didn't she? She'd also invested years in Richard, had children with him, built a life she thought was real. But I didn't even know her last name yet. I needed more information. That night, Richard came home at 7:30, as he did every Friday evening. He walked through the door with his travel bag over his shoulder and a smile on his face. "Hey, Maggie," he said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. He smelled like aftershave and something else, maybe another woman's laundry detergent, a scent that wasn't mine. "How was your week?" I asked, serving him the meatloaf I'd made, his favorite recipe from my mother's cookbook. "Long," he sighed, settling into his usual chair at the table. "Back-to-back meetings, you know how it is. But I'm glad to be home with you." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "This looks delicious, honey. You always take such good care of me." I smiled at him and I watched him eat. I watched the way he cut his meatloaf into neat squares, the way he'd done for 4 decades. I watched him chew and swallow and tell me about his fake meetings with fake clients. I watched a stranger wearing my husband's face sit in my kitchen and lie to me with the ease of long practice. "I was thinking," he said, wiping his mouth with his napkin, "maybe we should finally take that trip to Florida we've been talking about. February, maybe. Escape the Ohio winter for a week or 2. "That sounds wonderful," I said. "I'll start looking at rental properties tomorrow." "You're the best, Maggie," he said, standing up to take his plate to the sink. He kissed the top of my head as he passed. "What would I do without you?" I didn't answer. I was already thinking about what I needed to do next. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own life. While Richard was at work Tuesday through Thursday, I used the information from his secret phone to investigate. I found Linda's full name through property records. Linda Marie Brennan. She'd never taken Richard's last name, probably because he'd never actually married her. Our marriage license was filed in 1980. I checked. There was no second marriage license for Richard Peterson in the state of Ohio, which meant Richard and Linda weren't legally married, though Linda likely didn't know that. The children, Emma and Joshua, had the last name Peterson according to school records I found online. Richard had given them his name, while knowing they had no legal connection to him beyond biology. I found the house they rented, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a quiet Akron neighborhood, the kind of place young families live. The landlord's name was on the lease, Herman Properties. I found photos of the house online from when it was listed for rent in 2015. Beige siding, small front porch, attached garage. Nothing special, but maintained and clean. A home. I drove to Akron one Tuesday afternoon. It took me 42 minutes on I-77, past the suburbs of Cleveland, past the turnoff for Peninsula, until I reached the neighborhood. I parked across the street from the house, and I waited. At 3:15, a school bus stopped at the corner. 2 teenagers got off. A tall boy with Richard's dark hair and a girl with blonde hair like Linda, pulled back in a ponytail. They walked to the house together, the boy pushing the girl playfully, the girl laughing. Emma and Joshua, my husband's children, my husband's other children. They looked happy, normal, completely unaware that their father's entire life was a fabrication. At 4:30, a silver Honda Accord pulled into the driveway. Linda got out wearing scrubs, probably from her job at the dental office. She called out something to the kids, and they came out the front door. All 3 went inside together. At 6:15, Richard's car, his silver Lexus that I'd helped him pick out in 2019, pulled up to the house. He got out with his briefcase, the same one he carried when he came home to me, and he walked up to the door. Before he could knock, it opened, and the teenage girl, Emma, launched herself at him. He caught her, spinning her around, laughing. Then the boy came out, and Richard ruffled his hair. Linda appeared in the doorway, wearing an apron, and Richard kissed her the way a husband kisses his wife when he comes home from work. I watched my husband enter that house, and I understood with complete clarity that he loved them. This wasn't just an affair, wasn't just an obligation. He loved Linda. He loved those children. He'd chosen to build this second family, to maintain it year after year, to show up for soccer practices and birthday cakes and ordinary Tuesday dinners, which meant his love for me and our children was either divided or a lie. I couldn't decide which was worse. I drove home in a daze, barely remembering the route. By the time I pulled into our driveway, it was nearly 8 o'clock. My phone had 3 missed calls from Richard. I called him back. "Hey, honey, just checking in." His voice was warm and familiar. "Meetings ran late. Probably won't be home until tomorrow evening. Don't wait up. Love you." "Love you too," I said automatically, a reflex worn smooth by 45 years. But I didn't love him. Not anymore. How could I love someone I didn't know? That night, I called my son Michael. He's an accountant, good with numbers and details, and I trusted him to be rational. I told him everything. I sent him the photos from Richard's phone. I expected shock, maybe anger on my behalf. What I didn't expect was silence. "Michael," I said, "are you there?" "Mom," he said finally, his voice strange. "How long have you known?" "I found the card 2 weeks ago." "Why?" More silence. Then, "Sarah and I have known about Linda for about 6 months." The world tilted again. "What?" "David found out 3 years ago. He told us, made us swear not to tell you." I couldn't breathe. How did David know? He saw Dad with them at a restaurant in Akron when he was there for a work trip. He confronted Dad, and Dad admitted everything. He begged David not to tell you. Said it would destroy you, said he'd end it. But he never did. My children knew. For years, my children knew their father was betraying me, and they said nothing. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice broke. "Dad said you were fragile, that finding out would give you a heart attack or a stroke. He said you were happy, that telling you would only hurt you. He said," Michael's voice cracked too. "He said he loved you both, Mom. He said he couldn't choose. So you all chose for me. You decided I was better off living a lie. We didn't know what to do. Sarah wanted to tell you immediately, but David thought we should wait until after the holidays. Then COVID happened, and Dad was home all the time, and we thought maybe it was over. But then he went back to Akron, and we realized nothing had changed. 3 years, Michael. You let me believe my marriage was real for 3 years while you all knew the truth. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. We were trying to protect you. But they weren't protecting me. They were protecting themselves from having to deal with the mess. They were protecting their father from consequences. They were protecting everyone except the one person who deserved protection. I hung up on my son. Then I blocked his number. I did the same with Sarah and David. Whatever happened next, they'd made their choice. They chose Richard. Now I would choose myself. I hired a private investigator, a woman named Patricia Chun, who came highly recommended by a friend from church whose daughter had used her services during a messy divorce. I gave Patricia all the information I had: addresses, phone numbers, photos. I asked her to document everything, to find out exactly what Richard had been doing for the past 18 years. The report came back 2 weeks later, and it was worse than I imagined. Richard had told Linda that he was divorced, that his ex-wife had custody of their 3 adult children who wanted nothing to do with him. He'd told her his job required him to spend 3 days a week in Columbus managing the regional office, a story that aligned perfectly with his actual work history. Linda believed she was his second chance at love, his fresh start after a painful first marriage. Emma and Joshua believed their father was a dedicated professional who sacrificed time with them to provide for their family. They didn't question his absence because their mother didn't question it. They had no idea they had 3 half-siblings or that their father went home to another wife on weekends. The money trail was complicated. Richard had been depositing his paychecks into our joint account, as he'd always done. But he'd also opened a separate account in 2006, listing his address as a P.O. box in Akron. He'd been funneling consulting income, bonuses, and investment dividends into this account, money I never knew existed. Over 18 years, he'd moved approximately $430,000 through that account to support his life with Linda. $430,000. Money that could have been our retirement, our travel fund, our nest egg. Instead, it paid for another woman's life, another family's needs. Patricia's report included something else. Emma was preparing to apply to colleges. She wanted to study veterinary medicine at Ohio State University, a school that would cost $45,000 a year. Linda's text messages showed conversations about how they'd afford it, whether Emma could get scholarships, whether Richard's company benefits included tuition assistance. Emma wanted to go to Ohio State, the same school our grandson, Michael's son Tyler, currently attended, the same campus where he lived in a dorm, took classes, hung out with friends. Richard's 2 families, living in the same city, walking the same paths, breathing the same air, completely unaware of each other. Until now. I spent 3 days planning exactly what to do. I consulted with a divorce attorney, a shark of a woman named Rebecca Thornton, who'd handled some of the biggest divorces in Columbus. I showed her everything. The photos, the messages, the financial records, Patricia's report. Rebecca smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. "Mrs. Peterson," she said, "your husband is about to learn a very expensive lesson about honesty." Here's what I did. First, I quietly moved half of our joint savings into an account in my name only. Ohio is a marital property state, which meant I was entitled to half of everything anyway. That was $83,000, money I'd earned as much as Richard had through 45 years of unpaid domestic labor. Second, Rebecca filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud. In Ohio, adultery affects the division of marital property, especially when one spouse has been systematically deceiving the other for 2 decades. Third, I contacted Linda. I called her from a blocked number, and when she answered, I said, "My name is Margaret Peterson. I'm Richard's wife of 45 years. I think we need to talk." The silence on the other end was profound. Then, quietly, "This is a joke." I wish it were. Richard and I married in 1980. We have 3 adult children. We live in Columbus. He spends weekends with me and tells you he's working. I have proof. No. Her voice shook. No, Richard wouldn't. He's divorced. His ex-wife. She kept the kids. He couldn't see them. Is that what he told you? Linda, I'm not his ex-wife. I'm his wife. Currently. Actively. We sleep in the same bed every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. We go to church together on Sundays. I make him breakfast on Saturday mornings. We're not divorced. We've never been separated. You're the other woman, Linda, except I don't think either of us knew we were sharing him. I sent her a photo then, Richard and me from our 40th anniversary celebration, dated and time-stamped, showing us at a restaurant, holding hands, smiling. Linda made a sound like something breaking. Emma, she whispered. Joshua, they think he's their father. He is their father, but he's also the father of Michael, Sarah, and David. We have grandchildren, Linda. 5 grandchildren he sees on weekends and holidays. He's been living 2 complete lives. 18 years, she said. I gave him 18 years. I gave him 45, I replied. But I'm taking them back now. Here's what I want you to know, I'm divorcing him. I'm taking him for everything I can get. You're welcome to what's left, but I doubt there will be much. We talked for 2 hours. Linda cried. I didn't. I'd done my crying in private, and now I was in execution mode. We compared stories, timelines, lies. For every lie he told me, there was a corresponding lie he told her. It was almost impressive, the architecture of deceit he'd maintained. By the end of the call, Linda and I had become unlikely allies. We decided to confront Richard together. We chose Thursday evening, a day when Richard was supposed to be with Linda, but had actually told her he needed to stay late in Columbus for a work emergency. He told me he'd be home by 8. Linda and I met at a coffee shop halfway between Columbus and Akron at 7 o'clock. Seeing her in person was strange. She looked tired, older than her photos, her eyes red from crying. We sat across from each other with cooling coffee between us, 2 women who'd unknowingly shared a man for 18 years. I really thought he loved me, Linda said quietly. He probably did, I replied. That's what makes this so complicated. I think he loved us both. I think he wanted both lives and convinced himself he could have them. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to help us understand what we're dealing with. Richard isn't evil. He's selfish and cowardly, but not evil. He convinced himself this was possible, that he could keep everyone happy, that the lies were worth it to maintain 2 families. But someone was always going to get hurt, Linda said. Everyone was always going to get hurt, I corrected. It was just a question of when. At 7:45, Richard pulled into the driveway of my house. Linda and I were waiting in my living room, Linda having parked her car down the street. I heard his key in the lock, the familiar sound of him coming home. Maggie, he called out. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was... He stopped in the doorway to the living room. His face went white as he saw both of us sitting there. His wife of 45 years and his girlfriend of 18 years side by side on the couch. Hello, Richard, I said calmly. I believe you know Linda. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Sit down, Linda said, her voice hard. We have questions. For 3 hours, we interrogated him. Every lie, every deception, every moment of the past 18 years. Richard tried to justify it at first, claiming he'd fallen in love with Linda, but couldn't bear to leave me. That he'd thought he could make everyone happy. That he'd been trapped by his own choices. You weren't trapped, I said coldly. You made active decisions every single day for 18 years. You chose to lie to us both. You chose to steal money from our joint account to fund your second life. You chose to miss our daughter's wedding rehearsal because you were at Joshua's baseball game. You chose all of this, Richard. Own it. He cried, actual tears running down his face. I love you both, he said. I know that sounds impossible, but I do. I love you, Maggie. You're my wife, my partner, the mother of my children. And I love you, Linda. You gave me a second chance at family, at being a better father. I couldn't give either of you up. So you thought the solution was to lie to us both forever? Linda's voice shook with rage. To make us complicit in our own deception? To steal years of our lives? I thought I could make it work, Richard said weakly. I thought if I just kept everything balanced. There is no balance, I interrupted. There's only theft. You stole my life, Richard. You stole 18 years from Linda. You stole from your children, all 5 of them, by denying them knowledge of each other. You stole from yourself by living in constant fear of discovery. And for what? So you could play happy families twice. He had no answer. In the end, There was no answer that could justify what he'd done. Linda left first, telling Richard she needed time to think about what this meant for Emma and Joshua, whether to tell them the truth or to maintain the fiction for their sake. Richard tried to hug her, and she pushed him away with a sound of disgust. When we were alone, Richard turned to me with desperate eyes. Maggie, please. We can get past this. 45 years, that has to mean something. We can go to counseling, I'll do anything. Get out, I said quietly. This is my house, too. Rebecca Thornton is my lawyer. Papers are being filed tomorrow. You committed adultery and financial fraud. I have evidence of everything. You'll be lucky if you keep your pension. Get out of my house, Richard. Where am I supposed to go? Linda's, I imagine. Or a hotel. Or your car. I don't care. But you don't sleep under my roof tonight. You don't eat food I cooked. You don't lie in a bed I made. You're done taking from me. He left. I watched him pack a bag with shaking hands, watched him look around our bedroom as if memorizing it, watched him walk out the door. When his car pulled out of the driveway, I locked the door behind him and I sat down in the silence. And then, finally, I cried. Not for him. For me. For the life I thought I had. For 45 years of believing in something that was only partially real. For the grandmother I'd been to Michael and Sarah's children while Richard's other children grew up without knowing their siblings existed. The divorce took 8 months. Richard fought it at first, then gave up when Rebecca made it clear how much evidence we had. In the end, I got the house, 3/4 of the retirement accounts, alimony of $3,200 a month until Richard retired fully or I remarried, and half of his eventual Social Security benefits. Richard's reputation was destroyed. Word spread in our church, among his colleagues, through our social circles. He became that man who had 2 families, a cautionary tale, a punchline. His company asked him to resign quietly. He lost most of his friends. Linda left him too. Once the shock wore off, she couldn't forgive the deception. She told Emma and Joshua the truth because they deserved to know their father wasn't who they thought he was. The kids were devastated. Emma stopped speaking to Richard for 6 months. Joshua, who'd idolized his father, started seeing a therapist. My own children tried to reconcile with me. I eventually forgave them, though it took time. I understood they'd been in an impossible position, though I still believed they should have told me. Michael and Sarah have worked hard to rebuild our relationship. David and I are still distant. He'd known the longest and said the least. The strangest outcome was my relationship with Linda. After the dust settled, we started meeting for coffee, occasionally. Not often, maybe once every few months, but enough to have become something like friends. We bonded over our shared experience of being deceived by the same man. Our children have met now too. Emma and Joshua have half-siblings they're still getting to know. It's awkward, but they're trying. Richard lives alone now in a small apartment in Canton between Columbus and Akron, trying to maintain relationships with all 5 of his children. Most don't want much to do with him. He works part-time at a hardware store. His career in pharmaceuticals over. He looks older now, smaller, diminished. I don't hate him. That's the truth I've come to. I don't love him anymore either. He's just a man who made terrible choices and hurt everyone who cared about him. He's a cautionary tale, a lesson about the price of cowardice and selfishness. As for me, I'm 71 years old and I'm starting over. I reconnected with my college roommate in California and visited her twice. I've joined a book club with women who've become real friends, not just church acquaintances. I'm taking painting classes at the community college. I might even start dating eventually, though the idea still feels strange. I sold the house in Columbus, the one Richard and I bought together in 1985. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I moved to a condominium in a 55-plus community with a pool and a clubhouse and neighbors who know me as Margaret, not as Richard Peterson's wife, or that woman who was deceived for decades. I have my own money now, my own accounts, my own life. The alimony helps, as does my share of his retirement. I'm comfortable, not rich, but comfortable enough to make my own choices. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the 45 years I spent with Richard. I don't know how to answer that. Do I regret loving him? No. Do I regret trusting him? Yes. Do I regret the life we built? It's complicated because we also built Michael, Sarah, and David, and I'll never regret them. What I've learned is this: you can't trust someone to be who you want them to be. You can only trust someone to be who they actually are, and you have to pay attention to the evidence. I ignored small signs for years because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale of our marriage. The late night calls, the smell of unfamiliar perfume, the vague explanations about work trips. I told myself these were normal, that I was being paranoid, that Richard loved me. And maybe he did love me. But he loved himself more, loved his fantasy of having two families more, loved the ego boost of being needed by two women more. His love wasn't enough to make him honest, and without honesty, what's love worth? Emma is starting at Ohio State this fall. She got accepted to their veterinary program, and she's thrilled. I've been helping her, actually, with some of her costs. Not because I owe her anything, but because she's an innocent victim of her father's choices, just like I was. She and I have coffee sometimes, this young woman who shares half her DNA with my grandchildren. It's strange and sad and somehow also hopeful. Joshua is thinking about joining the military like David did. He wants structure, purpose, something solid after his world fell apart when he learned his father had been lying to him his entire life. I understand that impulse. My grandchildren through Michael and Sarah are confused about the whole situation. They have an aunt and uncle they never knew existed. Same age as some of them. Family gatherings are complicated now, but we're figuring it out slowly, because what else can we do? Richard's choices created this tangled mess, and the rest of us have to live in it. Last month, Richard asked to meet me for coffee. I said yes, curious about what he wanted after 2 years apart. He looked old, tired, defeated. He told me he was sorry, that he'd ruined everything good in his life, that he wished he could go back and make different choices. But you can't, I told him. None of us can. We can only decide what to do with the time we have left. He asked if I thought I could ever forgive him. I told him the truth, I don't know. Forgiveness isn't something I owe him. It's something I might give myself someday when I stop feeling angry about the years he stole from me. Do you ever think about what we had? He asked. The good times, before everything fell apart? I think about them, I said. But I also think about how much of it was real. Were you thinking about Linda when you danced with me at Sarah's wedding? Were you thinking about Emma and Joshua when you held our granddaughter for the first time? I'll never know what was real and what was performance, Richard. You took that certainty from me. He cried again. I didn't. I'd run out of tears for Richard Peterson. I'm 71 years old, and I've learned that you're never too old to start over. I've learned that trust, once broken, can't be rebuilt, only replaced with something different and smaller. I've learned that love without respect is worthless, that loyalty without honesty is betrayal. Mostly, I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived the death of my 45-year marriage. I survived the revelation that my entire adult life was built on lies. I survived my children's betrayal, my husband's deception, the total collapse of everything I thought was true. And I didn't just survive. I'm building something new. It's smaller, quieter, and it's all mine. No shared dreams with someone who's lying. No compromise with someone who doesn't deserve my time. Just me, Margaret and Peterson, no longer defined by being someone's wife or someone's mother, but simply being myself. That birthday card that fell out of Richard's pocket 2 years ago changed my life. It destroyed the fantasy I'd been living in, but it also freed me from a marriage that was half real at best. It gave me the truth, and as painful as truth is, it's better than living a lie. I tell this story not for sympathy, but as a warning. Pay attention to the small signs. Trust your instincts. Ask questions. Verify answers. Don't accept vague explanations about work trips and late nights. Don't let anyone convince you that you're paranoid for wanting honesty. And if you discover you've been betrayed, remember this: you are not the betrayal. You are not the lie. You are the person who loved honestly, who trusted genuinely, who built a real life even if the other person was only pretending. That's not weakness. That's strength. Richard stole 45 years of my life by lying to me. But he can't steal my future. That's mine now, completely mine, and I'm going to fill it with truth and joy and people who deserve my trust. I'm 71 years old, and I'm finally free. And Richard? Richard has 2 ex-families who barely speak to him, 5 children who don't trust him, and an empty apartment filled with the consequences of his choices. He thought he could have everything. Instead, he has nothing. That's justice. Slow, painful, inevitable justice. And I'm at peace with that.